Good morning everyone. My name is Ankit. You're watching the Indian Express analysis by StudyIQ IAS English, the session in which is live at 10 a.m. daily, and in this session we provide you with analysis of important news and articles from that day's newspaper. Now today is the day of Sankranti and the day of Pongal, so I extend you my warm wishes. Have a very happy and prosperous Pongal as well as Makar Sankranti. Now, as I was saying, in this session we provide you with MCQs and mains answer writing questions which will hone your analysis skill of newspaper, and it will also help you prepare for the exam setting, as in exam what is not necessary for you to have knowledge about everything, but what is necessary is that you must know about some things and you are able to apply that knowledge in the exam pressure situations. And our purpose of providing you with MCQs and mains answer writing daily is to inculcate this habit of problem solving, which is very essential, believe me, in getting your name in the final PDF list. Now in today's discussion, as you can see the topics behind me, now this is not there. There is another article related to US's move to restrict the supply of GPUs which are used in AI computing. Now this appeared on the world page as well as explained page of the Indian Express newspaper, and hence we'll be dealing with this article in detail, which is an important part of what GS paper 2 syllabus, that is international relation. Now such articles are important from exams these days because we have seen in mains examination particularly questions have been asked which are linked to multiple subjects. For example, this is related to international relations primarily, but you can also link the subject from economy, that is world trade, or science and tech point of view, which is a technological role of GPUs in modern AI computing. So this is how articles can be used to draft a question, and hence we need to analyze these articles from multiple perspectives, which we are going to do that in today. Now our first article deals with the topic related to environment, because a water irrigation project is expected to submerge some square kilometers of Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, which has appeared on the front page of Indian Express newspaper. Also an article related to governance, that is Forest Rights Act of the year 2006, the compliance with which has been a major source of issue between Ministry of Tribal Affairs on one hand and state governments on the other. As we have understood, state governments, they are creating more national parks and tiger reserves, which means relocation of forest dwelling communities, particularly the scheduled tribes who live in forest areas, to another areas, which means that their rights given under Forest Rights Act have been violated. So we'll try to understand what kind of rights are provided in the Forest Rights Act and how such relocation projects can make these rights go away for tribal communities. The third article is related to economy section. Rupee has fallen below the value of 86 against dollar. So we'll try to understand what are the factors behind strengthening the dollar or weakening the rupee, and it is important from GS paper 3 or economy perspective. So is the inflation trend, as it has eased to a 4-month low now, and it is below the level at which the RBI is expected to keep the levels of inflation, that it has fallen to the levels below 6% as it is statutorily required by the RBI. Also another important article from the economy section is rise in Indian bond yield. Now Indian bond yield or bond yield of any kinds are important from UPSC perspective, and we have seen in the past questions have appeared in the prelims, especially relating to what are the implications of bond yield and what are the consequences of bond yield. So we'll try to understand actually what this concept of bond yield actually is and how can we correlate it to the prices of bonds in general. Another article that appeared in the explain section is the Genome India project. Now Genome India project, as we know, is an attempt by the union government to map and understand the genome sequences of 10,000 individuals in the country, and it has recently concluded, and the data of which has been made available to the research on a managed access basis. And the second part or second phase of this project is expected to go underway quite soon, as it will entail understanding the genetic characteristics of people who are suffering from some kind of diseases. So we'll look into detail what is genome, what is a genome sequencing and how genome sequencing has been done under the Genome India project before understanding the implications and benefits of undertaking such a huge project. Understood? Now, having understood or made you aware of all the important articles that we'll cover today, let us start our today's discussion. But before that, please make sure to subscribe this Telegram channel called ATS Live. It is an important channel as I provide my notes daily on this channel immediately after the class ends, in addition to taking polls, giving you quizzes and also sharing important articles. So if you want to stay updated with current affairs, this is your one-stop solution. And if you are unable to find this channel, please make sure to scan this QR code as it will take you directly to the Telegram channel. Also, I put important current affairs related reels on Instagram, which can be useful in understanding you certain concepts, in improving your general awareness levels. Hence, you can also follow me on Instagram using this particular handle called ANKTSNGH, and the QR for which is provided here. Now, having said that, let us try to first begin our session with solving yesterday's question that I gave you with reference to Kurth Strait. Consider the following statement. Now, before solving this question, let us quickly take a look at what Kurth Strait is. As you can see from this map, Kurth Strait is a narrow body of water between Crimean Peninsula and Taman Peninsula, which is located in Russia. Crimea earlier was a part of Ukraine but was annexed by Russia back in 2014. Now, this is connected with a bridge which spans 12 miles in length, and this is the longest bridge in entire Europe. Now, this Kurth Strait was in news because of oil spill happened in this part of an area, which has created certain environmental calculations. So, this Kurth Strait also connects Sea of Azov in the north with Black Sea in the south. Understood? So, this is what you need to know before solving the question of yesterday. Now, it connects Black Sea with Sea of Marmara. It is incorrect. As I told you, it connects Sea of Azov. So, first statement here is incorrect. Moving to second statement, it separates part of Asian Turkey, that is Anatolia, from European Turkey. Again, it incorrect. It is not Kurth Strait which separates Turkey from European Turkey, but it is Strait of Bosphorus. Whereas Kurth Strait separates Crimean Peninsula from Taman Peninsula. Okay, so both of these statements here are incorrect. Therefore, option D is the right answer to our yesterday's question. Now, this will be the mains question that I will be taking up today before the end of our today's session, that United States decision to restrict the exports of advanced GPUs to certain countries. It highlights the interplay between national security, technological dominance, as well as global trade dynamics. And you have to critically analyze the implications of such policies by United States on international relations, on global technology supply chains, as well as innovation ecosystem. So, you see how I've curated this question, and it can be related to three topics, that is IR, with respect to global supply chain, which is related to world trade or economy, and with respect to innovation ecosystem, which is related to topics of science and technology. And you can expect in your mains examination such questions which interplays between multiple themes and subjects, and this is an example of such question. So, please stay tuned to our discussion to know how to approach certain kind of complex questions with a relative ease. Understood? Now, having said all of that, let me start our today's discussion with the first article that appeared in the Indian Express, and this appeared on the very front page, that is on page 1 of our newspaper, and it states that a Rajasthan river link lifeline, it could submerge as many as 37 square kilometers area of the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. Now, Ranthambore Tiger Reserve is located in Savai Madhopur district of Rajasthan, and there is a flagship river link project called as Parbati Kali Sindh Chambal Eastern Rajasthan Canal Project, abbreviated as PKC ERCP, and this is an ambitious part of linking the rivers of our country. And this kind of a project wants to transfer surplus water from Chambal River, which is located in quite close vicinity to the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, and this water will be ultimately used for irrigation, drinking and industrial use purposes, and it will be supplied to as many as 23 districts in Rajasthan. Now this kind of a project has immense social and economic benefits. Primarily, you can see it will end up benefiting as many as 3.45 crore people, which is a huge number. But on the downside, there is a significant drawback of such scheme. Why? Because on one hand, you are providing immense water supply irrigation benefits to people living in a dry state called Rajasthan, but on the other hand, you are submerging 37 square kilometers of protected land under the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, which houses about 56 to 57 number of Royal Bengal tigers, which is a protected species as far as Indian law is concerned. So this is what the crux of the issue is. So let us try to understand the importance of Ranthambore Tiger Reserve for India's tiger population and the region's ecology in general. Now, the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, it was earlier established as a Savai Madhopur Game Sanctuary back in 1995 by Government of India, and it was declared one of the part of Project Tiger Reserve in the year 1973, and after that in 1980 it gained the status of a national park, which means it has the highest protection as far as protected land is concerned. Now there are other important tiger reserves in Rajasthan. First of all is located in Bundi, called as Ramgarh Vishwadari Wildlife Sanctuary. Sareska, located north from Savai Madhopur in the Alwar district. Also, there is in Kota, called as Mukundra Hills Tiger Reserve. So these are four important tiger reserves located in the state of Rajasthan, one of which on the south east part of the state is called Savai Madhopur. Understood? Now let us try to understand more about Savai Madhopur Wildlife Sanctuary. As I told you earlier, it is located in the Savai Madhopur district, which is at the junction of Aravali Hills as well as Vindhyan ranges, and it is located in the eastern part of Rajasthan. Now this tiger reserve, called as Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, it includes under its ambit the Ranthambore National Park, Savai Mansingh Wildlife Sanctuary as well as Kela Devi Wildlife Sanctuary, and also there is an important World Heritage Site called as Ranthambore Fort, which is a part of UNESCO's World Heritage Site, is also located very inside the Tiger Reserve. So you have to remember such kind of protected areas which are under the ambit of Tiger Reserve, including a World National Heritage Site. Also, there are important rivers which flow in close vicinity to this wildlife sanctuary. They are Chambal River as well as a tributary of Chambal called Banas River. So these are the important river. Now why am I telling you the important rivers? Because I have seen PYQs as far as prelims UPSC is concerned. They have asked the locality of a particular national park and also a river which is closely associated to such national parks, and therefore we also need to know such diverse facts with respect to any protected area, and Ranthambore Tiger Reserve is also no exception to it. Now, as far as the terrain of this national park is concerned, it is primarily characterized by a rugged terrain, which means it comprises of a mix of hills, plateaus as well as valley. And in terms of flora, this region demonstrates particularly a kind of tropical dry deciduous and thorn forest, which means they are dominated by trees such as dhok trees as well as grasslands, and these trees have an immense potential to stay even green even without a regular water supply, which means they are thorny in nature. Also in terms of flora, as I told you, it naturally has tiger because the name Tiger Reserve. However, it also has presence of significant amount of leopard, sloth bear, jackal, striped hyenas and desert fox and palm civet. Understood? So in addition to tiger, please remember these are the important animals which inhabit this particular area, as well as flora consist of dhok trees, which are essentially a thorny type of a trees, as they are able to bear fruit even without a regular supply of water. Now with reference to Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, which of the following statement is correct? It is located in the eastern part of Rajasthan and it is known for tropical thorn forest. I told you about location eastern Rajasthan, and the nature of forest is tropical thorn, especially the dhok trees. The second statement, the reserve was initially part of Savai Madhopur Game Sanctuary established in 1955. Again, a fact and a straightforward statement is correct. It is one of natural habitats of Great Indian Bustard. It is incorrect. It is one of the natural habitats of Bengal tiger. However, Great Indian Bustard also located in Rajasthan, but they are located in Desert National Park and not the Ranthambore Tiger Reserves. So, third statement here is incorrect. First and second was right. Therefore, option A is the right answer. Now, good morning Bulbul, good morning Meer, good morning FTY, good morning BS. Yes, you are right. Option is A. Yes, BS, you are right again. Option is A. Now, let me move to another article of the day. This article appeared on the page 6 of the Indian Express newspaper, and it deals with denial of benefits extended under the Forest Rights Act to the forest dwelling communities and the resident scheduled tribes who live in forest areas. Now, such articles, especially with respect to Forest Rights Act, they are a part of Indian governance and hence are important part of GS paper 2 syllabus. Also, not from mains but also from prelims perspective, Forest Rights Act of the year 2006 is important. So, we'll try to understand the important aspects and characteristics of such act and how such acts extends a certain kind of rights to forest dwelling and scheduled tribe communities living in forest areas. So, first of all, let me tell you the context of this article. Now, there are many protected areas, particularly in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and West Bengal, in which the state government is trying to increase the protection levels of such area. For example, if it was a wildlife sanctuary, it is now being converted into tiger reserves and national parks, which means there is a need to displace the existing forest communities living in those areas, and also displacement denies them the opportunity to get benefits relating to forest and its resources, and hence this matter was a source of complaint made to Ministry of Tribal Affairs. And taking into cognizance such complaints made by relevant villagers who are affected by such denials of their Forest Rights Act, the Ministry of Tribal Affairs has issued a direction to the state governments, particularly state governments of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra as well as West Bengal, that there is a need first of all to create an institutional mechanism so that the compliance of FRA should be achieved in letter and spirit, and also set up a mechanism to address the grievances of local people. And this is the direction of Ministry of Tribal Affairs to the relevant state governments, and it has also issued because complaints were made to it in last few months, especially by residents of dozens of villages located inside these tiger reserves. Understood? Now, the context of this article is Forest Rights Act. So, let us try to understand first of all, what does Forest Rights Act mean? Now, it is an act which recognizes the right of forest dwelling tribal communities, that is FDTC, as well as other traditional forest dwellers. So, these are the two kind of people who are beneficiaries of this act, and what kind of benefits are available to them? It is the benefits of accessing and using the forest resources, and these communities are provided access to forest resources because they were earlier depending on forest reserves to meet their needs of seeking livelihood, need of having a habitation, and also important socio-cultural needs, because you understand such people, they live in close coexistence with forest and they depend on forest resources for eating, for making livelihood out of it, and also for seeking shelter. Now, such forest, these are very closely related to their socio-cultural aspects, that not just it is important for their socio-economic benefits, but they are very culturally attached to it. So, it is quite necessary for the administration and the government in general to understand their interlinkages with the forest and make sure that they are not denied them by such opportunities. So, this is what the Forest Rights Act was all about. Now, why was such act was brought in the first place? First of all, because the forest dwelling communities as well as scheduled tribes, they have faced historical injustices both by the colonial government and also by government of India after India got independent. So, as recognizing this historical injustice and ensuring them the rights to have a land tenure over the land of forest, earn their livelihood, and also have food security is the necessity of bringing such act. Additionally, you have to understand that forest dwelling communities, when they utilize forest resources, they do not do it for commercial purposes. Rather, they only use it for their own benefit, which is quite sustainable in nature. So, keeping, or if you want to strengthen the conservation regime of any protected area, you need to make sure that the tribals are living in that area, because they will sustainably utilize the resources and not harm the environment, because they themselves depend upon the forest and its resources. So, to strengthen the conservation regime in general was the original intention why such Forest Rights Act was brought in the first place. Understood? Now, let us try to understand what kind of rights are extended to forest dwelling communities and forest dwelling scheduled tribes. Now, this act, it recognizes three types of rights. It can be categorized into land right, use rights and management right. Now, the people living in forest areas, they are entitled to have 4 hectares of land per family, and they can use this land for other farming purposes. However, it is also prohibited that they cannot sell this land to any other person. Rather, they can only pass off this land to their own children by the use of method called inheritance. Understood? So, these are the land rights provided to family, which is a community based right. That is, a family is provided with a 4 hectare of land if they were living in that land before this act was enacted back in December 2006. Now, the use rights of this act includes use of minus forest produce of the area, which includes tendu leaves, fruits, vegetables, etc. However, does this forest or minor forest produce includes the use of timber? The answer is no, because wood and timber of forest, they are not constituted as a minor forest produce. Rather, tendu leaves, fruits, vegetables, other products of forest such as animals, they are called as minor forest produce. So, therefore, the Forest Rights Act, or the communities living in forest areas, they have the right to use forest resources, particularly use of minor forest produce, and they can market it, sell it, consume it as per their needs. So, they have an inalienable right over the minor forest produce, which excludes within itself the timber or the wood products. Now, they also have an inherent right to conserve, protect and manage the forest resources, but they should do it in a manner which is sustainable in nature. That means they cannot commercially exploit the forest resources. Rather, they can only utilize it and manage it if it is for a sustainable purpose. So, these are 3 kind of rights which are extended to people in general. Now, any intellectual property or traditional knowledge that the forest community or that is derived out of minor forest produce also, these are given to the forest dwelling communities. Understood? So, any company, for example, a commercial company which is utilizing or deriving any intellectual property or traditional knowledge out of the forest resources, that will not be given to the company. Rather, the ownership of that intellectual property and traditional knowledge will vest with the forest community itself. So, these are the kind of rights that are protected or provided to the Forest Rights Act. Also, this includes right for resettlement and rehabilitation in case they are removed from the forest area. So, these are the kind of rights that are provided under FRA. Now, who can claim these rights? First of all, the members of scheduled tribes, that is forest dwelling scheduled tribe, these are eligible to claim these rights, particularly the scheduled tribes who are living in this area right from the period of December 2005. Also, any other community residing in forest for at least 3 generations, that is more than 75 years prior to 2005, they are also entitled to such benefits under FRA. And who will recognize that whether these people have the rights over forest area or not? It is not the people or state government itself, but rather Gram Sabha in general. Now, Gram Sabha is sum total of people living in a particular Gram Panchayat who are eligible to vote, and when they sit together, it is called as Gram Sabha. And in total, when they sit together, they decide on certain important matters, one of which is determining who or what kind of rights a certain section of people has claim over. So this is the Gram Sabha. Now this Gram Sabha also recognizes or gives prior informed consent on whether the government wants to resettle and rehabilitate the forest dwelling communities. So in case the state government wants to take people away from their respected forest area, it has to first seek consent or permission from Gram Sabha. So this is the entire crux of today's article, that earlier the state government, it rehabilitated and resettled people but without seeking the permission of Gram Sabha, and as a result these forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other traditional forest communities, they complained to the union government, especially the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, that the state government has violated their right. Understood? So this is how the important aspects of forest rights is all about, and how such rights have been denied to forest dwelling communities, especially the members of scheduled tribe communities. Now based on this information, let us now try to solve another practice question with reference to Forest Rights Act of the year 2006. Consider the following statement: the act recognizes the rights of forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers to access and manage forest resources. This is a straightforward and a correct statement. The second statement, it empowers state government to play a central role in determining the nature and extent of forest right. Now, is it the state government? The answer is no. It is actually the Gram Sabha which determines the nature and extent of forest rights that should be provided to the forest dwelling communities. And the third statement, the act, it permits commercial exploitation of forest by communities for economic development without any restrictions. Now, it permits commercial exploitments for economic development of community, but that exploitation should be sustainable in nature and not commercial or without any restrictions. Understood? So third statement also is incorrect because there are some restrictions, that is use of resources but in a sustainable manner. So second and third statement is incorrect and we have to identify incorrect statement here. Therefore option C here is the right answer because 2 and 3 were incorrect. Now moving to another article, this one highlights that the rupee value, it has fallen below the value of 86 in yesterday's trade. Now such article appeared on page 13 of the Indian Express newspaper and it is important from economy section, hence I've made it a point to include the GS paper 3 syllabus. Now such questions are also important from prelims perspective. So please make sure to follow this article as I will tell you what are the reasons why the value of rupee is falling down and the value of dollar is strengthening in general. Now the context of this article is that the rupee fell past 86 because of strong dollar, and this strength of dollar has increased because of better than expected US job related data which was published yesterday, and it told that the levels of unemployment in US economy has reduced, and so has the need for Federal Reserve to further reduce its interest rates, and therefore it is expected that the Federal Reserve of United States, which is its central bank, it will not reduce or it will reduce the interest rates at a much lesser manner. So this is the reason why the value of dollar has strengthened. Now another reason is that the value of rupee has actually reduced or weakened because of higher crude oil prices, and you know India is a net importer of crude oil, that is as much as 85% of our crude oil requirements they are meant through imports, and if the imports of crude oil or the cost of crude oil increases, which means the value of rupee will collapse as we will require higher amount of dollars, and as we demand higher amount of dollars, the value of rupee which we are required to pay for those dollars will increase. And also this release and better than expected data with respect to US economy has also promoted many foreign investors who have earlier invested in India to take out their money from India and then invest in US itself, which means there has been significant outflow from foreign investors. So these are the two reasons why value of rupee is falling. First of all, that rupee itself is weakening, whereas the dollar itself is strengthening. Now, what are the factors behind strengthening of dollars or the weakening of rupee? Let us try to understand that. Now, whenever the demand of dollar increases or the supply of dollar reduces, it promotes or increases the value of dollar. Now, reverse is applicable when the rupee is falling. That is, when the demand of rupee is falling or there is an increase in supply of rupee, then we can say that the value of rupee will fall. For example, if earlier the value of per dollar was 80 rupee and it fallen down to 85, this is an example of fall of rupee. Understood? So this is the very basic concept in which you can understand the value of rupee and how it changes with respect to the dollar, that in today's case, when the dollar is strengthening, it ultimately can lead to only two results, that is, the demand for dollar is increasing or the supply of dollar has reduced. Whereas if the rupee is weakening, it means the demand of rupee has fallen back, whereas the supply of rupee has increased. So these are the only four possibilities with which the value of rupee or dollar may change. And you have to understand or solve any question based on just these four factors in total. And let me tell you how. For example, let us try to understand why has dollar actually strengthened in general. Now, it is because of two factors that I've already told you. It is first of all the US jobs data. It is highlighted that the amount of unemployment in the US economy has reduced, which means that the US Federal Reserve will now adopt a more cautious stance. Why? Because why the central bank of any country would reduce its interest rate so as to promote economy and employment. But when the employment is already reducing, it means the need for US Federal Reserve to cut the interest rates further has reduced. So this is the two factors which has increased the strength of US dollar, which means the demand for US dollar has increased, whereas the supply may have reduced. So these are the two factors for strengthening of US dollar. Now, another factor of pushing the value of rupee below is weakening of rupee, which means that the demand of rupee has reduced, whereas the supply of rupee may have increased. Now, let us try to understand how the demand for rupee has reduced or the supply has increased. It is because of capital outflow from India. Now, capital outflow from markets means whenever the investors are looking to sell their possessions in the market, it will mean that the supply of rupee will increase in the market, whereas they will be demanding dollars to take it back in their home countries. However, this will also promote the demand of US dollar. However, when the supply of rupee was increased and demand has reduced, it will mean that the rupee will weaken further. Another factor is that there is a sharp rise in crude oil prices, which means for every crude oil that India is importing now, it will have the need to shell out more and more rupees. That means the demand for dollar will increase, whereas the demand for rupee will decrease. And also, as India has to use more amount of rupees, that means the supply of rupee will also increase. So these are the two factors that are behind strengthening of the value of dollar and reduction in the value of rupee. Understood? Now, based on this information, let us now try to solve another practice question with reference to rupee dollar exchange rates. Consider the following statements. Now, the rupee dollar exchange rate, it is determined by the demand and supply of rupee in foreign exchange market under the managed float system. Now, as I told you, the factor of rupee and dollar exchange rate, it is actually demand by or driven by the demand and supply of both these currencies, and this current system of foreign exchange, it is called as managed float system because ultimately it is a floating system as the value of rupee and dollar is determined by the factors of demand and supply. However, whenever there is an increased vulnerability in the market, the management of value of foreign reserve, particularly with respect to rupee, is done by the Central Bank of India because it tries to increase the supply of dollar or reduce the supply of rupee in case if it wants to protect the value of rupee. And this is how RBI from time to time, however in less amount of numbers, has undertaken interventions in the forex market, and that is why it is called as a managed float system. So first statement here is correct. Moving to the second statement, an increase in crude oil prices generally leads to appreciation of Indian rupee against the dollar. Now I told you, whenever the prices of crude oil increases, it means that the demand for dollar will increase because India will need more dollars to pay for an equivalent amount of crude oil prices. And when demand for dollar increases, that means corresponding demand for rupee reduces, and this creates downward pressure on the value of rupee, which means the rupee is depreciating and not appreciating. Understood? So whenever value of rupee is reducing, it is called as depreciation, and this is what happens when there is an increase in crude oil prices. So theoretically, you can solve anything on this just by understanding the factors of demand and supply of both these currencies. So second statement is incorrect, only first was right. We have to identify correct statement. Option A is the right answer. Yes, BS, they can still sell fruits and vegetables. I am assuming you are talking about forest dwelling communities. The fruits and vegetables that they grow in the forest itself, they have an absolute right over it. So they can sell the fruits and vegetables, also tendu leaves, which are utilized in manufacturing of BDs. These are important minor forest producers which are utilized by scheduled tribes living in the forest areas. Now, good morning, BS. A happy Makar Sankranti to you as well. Now, my insight on the celebration of Makar Sankranti is I actually hail from the state of Bihar, and we consume what is called as sesame seeds, that is till, and we consume it after putting it in fire, and then we utilize that seeds. Okay. So I hope this makes it more clear to you, BS. Now I am moving to another article. This one appeared in the explained section of the Indian Express on page 9, and it states the Genome India project. Now, what is Genome India project? How it has been in news? Let us try to understand this. Now, Department of Biotechnology, which is looking after the Genome India project, it has announced on its new platform and framework for sharing of data that it has collected under Genome India project. Now, Genome India project enables the Department of Biotechnology and other research institutions to collect relevant human genome data from as many as 10,000 individuals in the communities. Now, the sequences of healthy individuals which have been utilized are provided from as many as 99 diverse ethnic populations in India, and this data which is now stored with Department of Biotechnology, it has helped create a baseline map of how India's genetic map looks like. And utilizing this base, the scientists will now undertake the second project or the second phase of Genome India project to build upon this data by sequencing the genomes now of people who are having specific diseases. And what they'll do is that they'll compare the sequences of people with diseases, and they compare this genetic sequence with healthy individuals and try to understand the nuanced differences between the two. Understood? Now, don't worry, we'll look more into this topic again. Now, first of all, let us try to understand what is a genome. Now, genome is actually a genetic markup of an individual like you and I, which has been passed to us by our parents in general. And this genetic markup decides how we or our body functions and develops in general. What your or my height is, what our complexions are, what kind of color our eyes are, all are determined by this very human genome. Now, this human genome in humans primarily is made up of deoxyribonucleic acid, which has 4 nucleotide bases, that is adenine, guanine, thymine and cytosine. Now, these 4 nucleotide bases, they are arranged in a different manner in every individual, and trying to understand the actual sequence in which these nucleotide bases have been arranged in a human, it is what is called as genome sequencing. So, deciphering the complete set of genetic instructions which is encoded in the nucleotide bases is what the process of genetic sequencing is. Now, what the scientists do is that they take the blood out of humans, they try to take the genetic material out of those bloods and understand the process of the encoding of various nucleotide bases, which is a long and time-taking process. Now, as I told you, each organisms, they possess a unique set of genome sequencing, and this genome sequencing is very much essential to understand the genetic information which may be encoded in the DNA of a human being or the RNA of viruses. As I told you, viruses such as COVID-19, virus, these were made out of RNA, and it is very essential to understand the genome sequencing of RNA viruses also if we want to assess the kind of impact a virus can have. Understood? So this is the process of genome sequencing, or what the process of genome sequencing is. Now let us try to understand what Genome India project is all about. This project was launched by Department of Biotechnology, which comes under the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the objective of this scheme first of all was to collect the 10,000 genetic samples from citizens of our country, and by sequencing these genetic samples, what the government intends to do, that it wants to create a database which will represent the India's diverse population. Now these 10,000 people were selected from different communities, and we understood as many as 99 different ethnic communities were utilized for giving the samples. Now the research under the genome sequencing project or Genome India project is done by as many as 20 research institutes in the country, and it is led by Center for Brain Research, which is located in the city of Bangalore. Also, the data for this project will be stored in India Biological Center, and this is located in the city of Faridabad, part of Haryana state. Now, the Genome India project second phase now, which will begin quite soon, it involves sequencing of genomes of people who have certain specific diseases. Now, this kind of a second phase will enable the researchers first of all to sequence the DNA and genome of the people who have diseases, and then they'll compare this data with the data of healthy individuals that they have taken from the first phase of the project. And this will understand or help scientists understand the kind of genetic characteristics a person, for example, who has cancer or a cardiovascular disease may have, and then they can be utilized for further scientific purposes. So this is the second phase of the project. Now let us try to understand what are the benefits of Genome India project in quite short. First of all, it helps understanding the genetic disorders by conducting diagnosis, undertaking carrier screening, and also gene therapy. These kind of measures are very much essential if a person wants to get treated with respect to genetic disorders, and to know if a person is suffering from any genetic disorder is not, we need to first sequence his or her genome sequence. Also, such genome sequencing helps in development of personalized medicine, as tailored treatments which are very specific to our genetic sequences can be developed, and it will also help scientists understand whether the drug and its impact or response can be positive or negative in any human being. Now, beyond medicine, it is also important for public health purposes, as genome sequencing of RNA virus helps understand the nature of virus and how it can spread in the population, which is a part of epidemiology, and how, if the virus is potent, God forbid, it can also help government frame its pandemic response. That, for example, if a virus is actually very potent, the pandemic response of the government will be quite strict. And whether if the virus is not so potent, the government will try to be liberal about the restrictions it is on the people. So this is how pandemic response is actually made as per the data provided in the genome sequencing of the viruses. Also, it is important for agriculture and biotechnology part, as genome sequencing can help us develop a more resistant crop varieties, resistant to pesticides, resistant to drought, and also understand the genetic markup of important livestock, which can be essential for purposes of animal breeding or selective animal breeding. So these are the important benefits of Genome India project. Now let us move to another article, but before that I have to tell you something. This course that you're watching right now on YouTube is also available on our website. Using this link you can access the course, and you can just access this course just for 1 rupee in total. And the benefits of such courses is that you can get access to the PPTs there itself. You have an option to download this video in case if you want to watch it without an internet connection, and you can also practice the analysis that we conduct on a daily basis on video using the interactive MCQs on the portal itself. So this is how you can access this course. The link I have provided here. Understood? Now let us move to another article of the day. This one appeared again on page 13 of the newspaper, that is the business page, and this article reports that the inflation in our country has eased eased down to a 4-month low figure. Now, last month it was about 5.48. Now it has reduced to just 5.22, which means it has now achieved a 4-month low. Now, this article, as you can see, is quite huge, and it tells you each and every category, whether that category has increased or reduced inflation. And from exams perspective, we need not get into the facts related to each and every category, because such information appears every month in newspapers. What is important, however, for you to understand is the broader trends in the inflation. And as I told you from this graph, the inflation, after it increased in the summer months and the months of monsoon, it has now reduced to the value of 5.22. And the major factor in reducing or cooling off of the inflation is that the food inflation, which increased during the months of monsoon, have now begun to reduce. And because of that, the overall retail inflation, which is actually consumer price index, and it is tracked by RBI itself, it has gotten below the levels of 6%, which is the upper band of RBI's mandate. Understood? Now, from exam, what is important is what is this index, which body publishes this index, and the constituents of this index. Now, as far as this consumer price index is concerned, it measures the inflation at the retail level. There is another index called as WPI, which, as the name suggests, is a measure of inflation at the wholesale level. Understood? So, these are two important indices. Now, consumer price index, it is calculated by National Statistical Office, which is a part of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and it uses 2012 as the base year to find inflation levels. Now, the data of this inflation is published 12th of every month. Now, 12th this time was a Sunday. So, this was published on 13th, that was a Monday yesterday. Now, this inflation, it covers both urban and rural areas in the country, and it also includes within the ambit the inflation relating to services. Now, WPI in general excludes the impact of indirect taxes on our inflation. However, as there is a retail level inflation, particularly CPI, it also tracks or includes the indirect taxes within its ambit. Now, is it targeted by RBI? The answer is yes, because the changes made into RBI Act of the year 1934, it made it mandatory on the RBI to keep the levels of CPI at the levels of 4% with an upper and lower band of 2%, which means that the RBI has a mandate to keep the levels of inflation between 2% to 6% of consumer price index. So, this is what the mandate of RBI is. Now, what are the various constituents or parts of CPI? The highest weightage given in the CPI is given to food and beverage, as it consists of 45.86%. And it is important to note that because of rise in food inflation, the value of CPI had increased because the weightage given to food is highest when you compare it to other components. Now, these are the components. You can watch it after the class ends, as I will provide you with the slide on my Telegram channel. But what you have to remember from our today's discussions perspective, that the highest weightage in the CPI is given to food and beverage sections. Understood? Now, based on this data, let us now try to solve another practice question with respect to consumer price index. Consider the following statement. CPI is a measure of retail level inflation that tracks price changes of a fixed basket of goods and services over time. Now, the basket of inflation has been fixed from time to time whenever there is a change in methodology of CPI, and hence the first statement is correct. Now, CPI is used by RBI for inflation targeting under its monetary policy framework. I told you, because of amendment made to RBI Act 1934, it is mandatory on the RBI to track and control the levels of inflation based on the consumer price index. The third, CPI is published monthly by the Ministry of Finance, and it includes separate indices for rural, urban and combined categories. This second part of the statement is correct. However, it is not published by Ministry of Finance, rather it is published by National Statistical Office, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Hence, third statement is incorrect, and you have to identify correct statement. First and second is right. Therefore, option A is the right answer. Now, Namaskar Doraemon. Now moving to another article, this one highlights that the bond yield of Indian bonds particularly have risen to 6.8%. Now this bond yield actually has risen because of various factors, that is rise in US treasury yields and also weakening of rupee. Now what is actually bonds, how their yields are calculated and how such yields have are subject to changes based on different conditions, let us try to understand that. Now a bond, as you know, is a financial instrument which enables any bond issuer, be it corporate or government, to seek money or investment from other people, and in return for their investment the people are get their principal money back or principal amount of money back, and they are also subject to earn certain interest on the bond. For example, if Government of India issues a bond for rupees 100 and it says to the bond issuer that after a period of 1 year the Government of India will pay to the bondholder a sum total of 105 rupees. So the return on investment of this kind of a bond, you can understand, is 5%. Because for every $100 rupee investment in a Government of India bond, the bond holder is earning 105 rupees. Now, what if in certain cases the value of this bond reduces? For example, if I am a bond holder and I am holding a 100 rupee bond, but what if I require this money urgently for some purposes? So naturally I'll try to sell off this bond at a discount pricing, which means suppose I sold off this bond for a sum total of just 95 rupees because I needed the money urgently. So the new bondholder of this 100 rupee bond, which it has actually purchased it from me for rupees 95, will be getting how much rupees after 1 year? 105, because Government of India has sold. Any bondholder who is holding a 100 rupee bond will get 105 rupee from the Government of India after the period of 1 year. So what the return of this investor would be when he purchased a 100 rupee bond from me just for rupees 95 because I needed money for emergency purposes. So here the return is 10.85%. So as you can understand, as the bond pricing, which was 100 rupees earlier, now the bond pricing for the second investor is 95 rupees. So the rate of return or the bond yield, this is also known as bond yield, has actually risen from 5% to 10.5%. So you understand the correlation. As bond prices reduces, the bond yields will increase. So there is an inverse correlation between bond yields and bond prices. And this correlation is very important if you want to solve any question related to bond yield. First, try to establish the relationship between changes in the economy and how it will affect the bond prices. And then from understanding the impact on bond prices, you can naturally tell whether the bond yields have increased or not. So bond yield theoretically reflects the earning that an investor is expected to make out of a particular bond. And there are cases when the bond yields and bond values are related. As I told you, there is an inverse relationship. As the prices of bond they increase, the bond yields will reduce, and vice versa is also true. Now, when does the prices of bond reduce? For example, if there is an expectation in the market that the banking interest rates will go up. So what will happen? That the bondholders will try to sell off their bonds and move their investment into banking deposits because it is offering them higher interest rates. So in that case, the bond demand will reduce and so is the prices of bond, and this will push up the bond yields. Now opposite happens whenever there is an expectation that the interest rates will be reduced, it will increase the demand for bond and hence its prices, thereby pushing down the bond yields. Understood? So this is the cause and effect relationship of bond prices and how the changes in bond yields are affected by the moves in the economy. Now let us try to hone our knowledge by solving this question. Consider the following factors and we have to understand whether these fallen factors will result into hardening of your bond yield. What is hardening of bond yield? Means increase in bond yield. Understood? If it was weakening, weakening would mean reduction in bond yield. Understood? So these kind of words are used quite often in economy and you have to pay close attention to what kind of words are used in the question. Now rising demand for bond. Now whenever the demand for bond increases, you understand the bond prices will increase. And what is the correlation between bond prices and bond yield? If the bond price is increased, the bond yield will reduce. So this does not lead to hardening, rather it leads to weakening of bond yield. So first statement is incorrect. Now sale of government securities by central bank under the open market operation. Now whenever there is a sale of government securities, it will mean the supply of government securities will increase. So whenever there is an increase in supply, the prices of government securities will reduce. Now what do we understand by reduction in bond prices? It will lead to increase in bond yield. So second statement here is correct. Now increased borrowing by the government. Now how does government borrows money from the market? It borrows money by issuing bonds in the market. So when government itself is increasing its borrowing, it means the supply of bonds will increase. Therefore, the prices of bonds will reduce because of increase in supply. And what do we know about reduction in bond prices and its effect on bond yield? The bond yield is again expected to increase. So third statement also is correct. Now, how many of the above will result into increase in bond yield or hardening of bond yield? The answer is only 2, because second and third is right. Now moving to the last article of the day. This article says that the US government, it has tightened its grip on flow of GPUs, that is graphic processing units. And you understand from our previous discussions that graphic processing units, by virtue of its scalability, by virtue of its high throughput and virtue of its parallel processing capabilities, are indispensable for use of AI. So that is why the demand for GPUs is expected to rise in coming months and years, because the world itself is undertaking increased development of AI, and these GPUs are expected to power API programs and computers. Now, what the government of US has done is that it has further restricted the flow of artificial intelligence chips, which are graphic processing units, and this is intended to keep the technology, which is particularly a technology developed by US, to itself and to its allies, whereas it is trying to block the access of such technologies for antagonist countries of US such as China, Russia, North Korea, etc. So this is the context of today's article. Now it has also added a cap for its allies, that some allies which are not as close to US, they will have a cap that they can use only certain amount of GPUs every year. So this is the context of the article. Now the new limits on purchase of such GPUs which are used to power data centers, which is needed to train a large amount and feed large amount of data into computer systems, which leads to development of AI tools. And hence, as I told you, these GPUs are indispensable for AI tools, and these GPUs are primarily made by 2 US companies, that is NVIDIA as well as Advanced Micro Devices, popularly known as AMD. Now these are US companies, and also major cloud services providers such as Google, Amazon, Microsoft. These will be utilizing GPU tools. However, the projects of these companies in other countries have been exempted from the restrictions made under this law. So you understand what US is doing. It is not restricting its own companies from deploying the AI based resources, rather it is prohibiting the transfer of these GPUs and AI based resources to other countries. So this is the article is all about. Now this kind of a regulation by US is dividing the world into 3 different blocks. First is the allies which are closest to US, such as South Korea, Japan and Britain, and they will have an unrestricted access to GPUs because they have been held in the tier 1 category. The tier 2 countries are countries which are more inclined towards US but not are their closest allies, such as Singapore, Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE. They will face some kind of a cap, that is they will only be able to use GPUs only up till a certain amount every year. Whereas the third category, countries which are considered as antagonists to US, they will be banned from accessing such technologies. These are Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, etc. and they will be barred from receiving such technologies altogether. Understood? So this is how US is trying to restrict its own technology from getting into hand to its adverse nations. Now let us try to understand more about the news. Further, it has exempted its own companies like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, as they can freely deploy their assets into other countries, but they have to make sure that only 50% of their total AI computing power is deployed outside US. Also, not more than 25% of this computing power can be deployed to outside tier 1 countries, and non-single tier 1 countries at max can have only 7% of their respective powers. Now, such are just indicative data which you can use in your answer writing. Now, let us try to understand what is the rationale of US behind such a move. First of all, as you can understand, the artificial intelligence, it has a dual use potential, which means you can utilize artificial intelligence and its tool to undertake developments in healthcare, education and food related sector. However, these can also be deployed for developing biological weapons, supporting cyber attacks on other adversarial nations, as well as assisting with surveillance, which goes against the very demand of human rights abuse. Also, there is a need for a US in order to prevent its adversaries from getting access of its cutting edge technology, particularly with respect to AI tools. And also, what the US government wants to do is that it wants to maintain its technological edge and supremacy over its adversarial nations, and hence it is trying to restrict the access or denying the access of AI and its related tools to its adversarial nation. So these are the rationale or why US is undertaking such a move. Now let us try to understand the implications of such a move on US and its companies, on its allies and on its adversarial nations. First of all, it will exacerbate the political tensions that the US now has with China. As you can understand, it is undertaking various or measures to deny access of semiconductors to China. Now, such denying access of graphic processing units is also expected to further reduce its level of comfort with relations with China. And also, when allied and partners, particularly countries like India, who are subjected to use of caps, or they are subjected to limit the use of AI tools and GPUs, these will be perceived by allied countries of US as a unilateral and a protectionist measures, as US has not consulted these countries, rather they have denied or rather limited their access to US based technology unilaterally, and this is a protectionist move. So such kind of moves are perceived as protectionist and unilateral by its allies, and it can also force these allies to generate and develop their own AI based tools, which will lead to fostering of parallel innovation ecosystem development, and also it will also play a key role in reducing the global collaboration when the technological development is happening. So this is how it will impact the innovation ecosystem. Now let us try to understand how it will have an impact on global supply chain. Further, as US companies will not be able to sell their GPUs to many countries, particularly China, which is undertaking rapid developments in AI, so their revenue will be reduced in short term, and also it is expected to disrupt the global supply chain, and it will make the global supply chain in the use and deployment of GPUs more inefficient, and it will also entail higher cost for the companies who are importing GPUs from US. So this is how it will make the global trade more inefficient. It will promote development of parallel innovation ecosystem as far as development of AI is concerned, and it will also exacerbate US's political tensions with China in general. And whereas allies is concerned, they will perceive such a move by US as an unilateral and a protectionist measures. Understood? Now let us try to solve the practice question. The United States decision to restrict the export of advanced GPUs to certain countries highlights the interplay between national security, technological dominance, global trade, and we have to critically analyze the implication of such policies on international relations, on global technology supply chain and innovation ecosystem. Now, like naturally, you will divide your answer into three parts: introduction, body and conclusion. Now, with introduction, you will highlight the measure that US has brought by restricting, and it has divided world into three categories. That first category is provided unrestricted access, second is provided with a capped access, whereas the restrictions is imposed in total on the third section. So this is how you will start your answer, with highlighting the measure taken by US. Now, in terms of body, you will highlight what are the rationale behind such a move by US, and you will also highlight the implications of such a move on US, that is by virtue on international relation, by virtue on global supply chain, and by virtue on innovation ecosystem. So this is how you will divide your body into two parts, rationale and implication, and further in three subparts of implication, that is impact on international relation, global supply chain, and innovation ecosystem. Whereas you will conclude your answer saying that such a move is expected to make allies think that such a move is unilateral and protectionist, whereas it will increase the adversarial position of US's relationship with China. Whereas as far as global supply chain is concerned, it is expected to make global supply chain more inefficient and higher cost. So this is how you will try to attempt this answer. Now, if you have any problem in writing this answer, please feel free to reach me out on my Telegram channel, and if you have actually written your answer, please submit your answers for feedback on the Telegram channel. So this will, when we conclude our today's discussion, the link to the Telegram channel is here, and the practice question which I will take up tomorrow before the session will start is here. So please give me the correct answer in the comment section. We will complete our today's session now. FTY, India comes in the second category, that India will have a capped access to US resources in AI. I hope this addresses your answer. I'll see you again tomorrow sharp at 10 a.m. Until then, keep reading, keep analyzing, keep solving, and more importantly, keep writing.